I was the perfect mark, successful architect, good salary, and a bleeding heart that made me stop and help a struggling single mom in a hospital waiting room. What started as paying a stranger's medical bills ended with me building them a life, only to discover I was nothing but an ATM with a pulse. When they tried to replace me with her ex, right in my own home, they thought they had me cornered. What they didn't count on, the marriage certificate that would bring their entire scheme crashing down. They picked the wrong man to screw over. My name is Ricky Simon. I'm 42 years old and work as an architect at one of the top firms in Boston. I've built a good life for myself. Nice house in the suburbs, a career I'm proud of, and enough money in the bank to not sweat the small stuff. What I didn't have was someone to share it with, which never bothered me until I met her. It was a cold December afternoon when I found myself sitting in Mass General's waiting room. My brother was having routine surgery. Nothing serious, but family is family. That's when I noticed her, Victoria Sanders. She was sitting across from me, clutching a little girl who couldn't have been more than 2 years old. The kid was crying softly, and Victoria looked like she hadn't slept in days. I'm not usually one to stick my nose in other people's business, but something about her seemed so defeated. Before I knew what I was doing, I found myself offering her a coffee from the vending machine. She hesitated, but accepted with a tired smile that somehow lit up her whole face. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to make conversation. Victoria nodded, bouncing the little girl on her knee. "Olivia needs tests they don't cover under my insurance. I'm a kindergarten teacher, and let's just say the benefits aren't exactly premium." I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the way her voice cracked, or how tightly she held her daughter, but I heard myself say, I could help with that. The look she gave me, shock, disbelief, hope, suspicion, all flashed across her face in seconds. "You don't even know me," she said. "Sometimes strangers can be kinder than family," I replied, thinking of my ex-wife who'd emptied our joint account after only 3 years of marriage. When I handed her my business card with my cell number scribbled on the back, I thought that would be the end of it. Just a good deed done for someone who needed a break. Boy, was I wrong. That moment in the hospital waiting room was just the beginning of a story that would change everything. A story about trust given and betrayed, about love that was never really love at all, and about a man who learned the hard way that no good deed goes unpunished. 3 months passed after our meeting at the hospital. I'd written a check for Olivia's treatments, shook Victoria's hand, and walked away feeling like I'd done my good deed for the year. Case closed, or so I thought. Then one evening, while I was knee-deep in blueprints for a new waterfront project, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ricky, it's Victoria Sanders from the hospital. Olivia got her test results back. All clear. I can't thank you enough." I stared at the message, surprised she'd reached out. Most people take the money and run. Not that I was complaining. I shot back a quick reply. "Great news. Glad I could help." I figured that would be the end of it. But 5 minutes later, my phone lit up again. "Would you consider letting me cook you dinner sometime? Nothing fancy, just a proper thank you." Warning bells should have been ringing. A beautiful single mom wanting to cook me dinner? That had complication written all over it. But I've been pulling 60-hour weeks for months, living on takeout and coffee. The thought of a home-cooked meal was too tempting to pass up. "Sure," I replied. "Just name the time and place." A week later, I found myself driving to her apartment in a modest neighborhood in Somerville. Victoria opened the door wearing jeans and a simple blouse, her blonde hair pulled back. The apartment was small but tidy, with colorful artwork, clearly Olivia's handiwork, decorating the refrigerator. "Uncle Ricky," Olivia shouted, rushing toward me with surprising speed for such tiny legs. "Uncle?" That was new. Victoria blushed. "Sorry, I told her about the nice man who helped with her doctor visits, and she decided you're her uncle now." "No problem, kiddo," I said, ruffling Olivia's curls. Something warm and unfamiliar settled in my chest as the little girl grabbed my hand and dragged me to see her toys. Dinner was nothing fancy, just pasta with homemade sauce and garlic bread, but it was the best meal I'd had in months. Victoria was easy to talk to, laughing at my lame architect jokes and telling me stories about her kindergartners. By the time we finished a bottle of wine and put Olivia to bed, I felt like I'd known her for years instead of hours. "This was nice," I said, standing at her door, not quite ready to leave. "It was," she agreed, looking up at me with those big brown eyes. "Maybe we could do it again sometime." One dinner turned into weekly get-togethers. Movies after Olivia went to bed. Weekend trips to the park. Before I knew it, I was picking up Olivia from daycare when Victoria worked late and keeping extra cereal in my pantry for their impromptu morning visits. 3 months in, Victoria kissed me on my doorstep after I'd grilled steaks for her birthday. It felt right, like the natural progression of whatever we'd been building. By month 4, she was staying over on weekends, Olivia curled up in my spare room, surrounded by toys I'd gradually accumulated. "We're getting serious, aren't we?" she asked one night, her head resting on my chest. "Looks that way," I replied, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. "Is that okay with you? Olivia and I come as a package deal." I thought about how my quiet, structured life had been turned upside down by finger paintings on my fridge and princess movies on my TV. How I'd started looking forward to coming home for the first time in years. "More than okay," I said, meaning it. Looking back now, I see all the red flags I missed. How quickly she integrated herself into my life. How skillfully she played the struggling, single mom card. But hindsight's 20/20, and, at the time, all I saw was the family I never knew I wanted. 6 months after Victoria and Olivia entered my life, I found myself shopping for an engagement ring. If you told me a year earlier that I'd be planning to propose to a kindergarten teacher with a toddler, I would have said you were nuts. But there I was, dropping 3 months' salary on a diamond that made the jeweler whistle. "Taking the plunge, huh?" he asked as he boxed up the ring. "Seems like it," I replied, trying to ignore the butterflies in my stomach. I planned the proposal carefully. A weekend at a beachside B&B in Cape Cod. Olivia staying with Victoria's sister. Perfect setting, perfect timing. What I didn't plan for was Victoria finding the ring while unpacking her toiletry bag. "Ricky." Her voice was small, shocked. She stood in the bathroom doorway, holding the open velvet box, tears already streaming down her face. So much for my sunset proposal on the beach. I dropped to one knee right there on the worn carpet of our room and asked her to marry me. She said yes before I even finished the question, tackling me with a hug that nearly knocked me over. "We're going to be a real family," she whispered against my neck. We were married 2 months later at the courthouse. No big ceremony, no fancy reception. Just us, Olivia as our unofficial flower girl, and a couple of friends as witnesses. Victoria wore a simple white dress, and I wore the blue suit from my closet. Olivia threw flower petals everywhere, including down the back of the judge's robe when he wasn't looking. After signing the papers, we took Olivia for ice cream, letting her get a double scoop with sprinkles to celebrate. As I watched chocolate drip down her chin while Victoria wiped it away, laughing, I thought, this is it. This is what happiness feels like. We moved Victoria and Olivia into my house the next weekend. My sleek, minimalist bachelor pad transformed overnight into a family home, with toys in every corner and finger paintings on the refrigerator. I converted my home office into Olivia's bedroom, painting the walls purple at her insistence. My architecture awards now shared shelf space with her stuffed animals. "Is this weird for you?" Victoria asked one night, watching me build a pillow fort in the living room with Olivia. Going from zero to instant family. "Good weird," I assured her, though truthfully, sometimes the change gave me whiplash. But seeing Olivia fall asleep calling me Daddy made any adjustment pains worth it. I threw myself into fatherhood with the same dedication I gave my architectural projects. I learned to braid hair, memorize the names of cartoon characters, and became an expert at removing gum from clothing. I read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, built the most elaborate blanket forts, and never missed a dance recital or doctor's appointment. For her part, Victoria seemed to blossom as my wife. She quit her teaching job, saying she wanted to focus on making our house a home and being there for Olivia. I supported her decision. My income was more than enough for the three of us, and the thought of Olivia having her mom's full attention rather than being shuttled to daycare was appealing. "You're too good to us," Victoria would say, kissing me goodbye each morning as I left for work. And I believed I was the luckiest man alive. I had the family I never knew I wanted, a successful career, and a beautiful home. Everything was perfect, but perfect things rarely last. And perfect families? Sometimes they're just elaborate facades hiding the ugliest truths. I just didn't know it yet. The first 3 years of our marriage were everything I'd hoped for. Olivia started school. Victoria kept our home running smoothly, and my career took off with a promotion to senior partner. Life was good, until it wasn't. The change in Olivia happened almost overnight. One day, she was my little shadow, begging me to push her on the swings and build Lego towers. The next, she was giving me the cold shoulder, refusing to call me Dad, and rolling her eyes whenever I spoke. What's going on with Olivia? I asked Victoria one night, after putting up with another dinner of Olivia's stony silence. She's just being a preteen, Victoria shrugged, barely looking up from her phone. Girls that age get moody. But this felt different. Olivia was 9, hardly a teenager, and her attitude seemed targeted specifically at me. Whenever Victoria entered the room, Olivia transformed back into a sweet kid. One afternoon, I came home early from work to surprise them. I found Olivia in the living room, playing a board game with Victoria. "Hey guys, room for one more?" I asked, setting down my briefcase. Olivia's smile vanished. She stood up, gathered her game pieces, and announced, "I'm going to my room," without meeting my eyes. "Olivia," Victoria called half-heartedly, but made no real effort to correct her behavior. I waited until Olivia was upstairs before turning to my wife. "Seriously, what's going on? Did I do something wrong?" Victoria sighed dramatically. "She found out you're not her real father. I had to tell her eventually. She was asking questions." My stomach dropped. "And you didn't think to include me in that conversation?" "It just came up," Victoria said, defensive. "Besides, she had a right to know." Of course Olivia had a right to know, but the way it was handled sent a clear message. I was an outsider, not truly part of their family unit. The next few months were rough. I tried everything to reconnect with Olivia, special daddy-daughter outings, helping with homework, even taking her to my office to show her what architects do. Nothing worked. She remained distant, answering my questions with one-word responses and flinching away from hugs. Victoria was no help. She watched our relationship deteriorate with passive indifference, occasionally making excuses for Olivia, but never stepping in to mediate. Sometimes I caught a look in her eyes, not concern, not sadness, but something like satisfaction. It chilled me to the bone. I was losing my daughter, and somehow, my wife seemed okay with it. More than okay, almost pleased. I just couldn't figure out why. While trying to salvage my relationship with Olivia, I neglected to see the bigger warning signs. One Tuesday, I came home early, hoping to surprise Olivia after school with her favorite ice cream. Instead, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with a man I'd never seen before. He was in his 30s, with a leather jacket and an expensive watch. Olivia was laughing at something he'd said, her face animated in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Who are you?" I demanded, setting down the ice cream. The man stood, extending his hand with casual confidence. "Mark Wilson, friend of the family." Olivia's expression closed off immediately. "Mom invited him," she said, her tone challenging. "Where is your mother?" I asked, ignoring the outstretched hand. "Shopping. She'll be back soon." Mark dropped his hand, smirking. Victoria mentioned she might be late. Asked me to watch Olivia. My blood boiled. Some stranger was sitting with my daughter, and Victoria hadn't bothered to inform me. I pulled out my phone and called her immediately. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," Victoria said when she answered, her voice unnaturally light. "Mark's an old friend. He's helping Olivia with a school project." "I've never heard of this Mark before," I replied, watching as the man whispered something to Olivia, making her giggle. "Don't be so paranoid, Ricky. He's perfectly safe." That night, after Mark left and Olivia went to bed, I confronted Victoria. "Who exactly is this guy, and why wasn't I consulted before you invited him into our home?" "He's just someone I knew before we met," Victoria said, suddenly interested in folding laundry. "He's good with kids." "That's not an answer." "Who is he to Olivia?" Victoria paused, then sighed dramatically. "If you must know, he knew Olivia's biological father. I thought she should have some connection to that part of her life. I felt like I'd been punched. And you didn't think to discuss this with me first? You're not her biological father, Ricky. There are some decisions that are mine to make." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Despite years of raising Olivia, paying for her education, loving her as my own, I was still an outsider in Victoria's eyes. The next week, I came home to find Mark's car in our driveway again. This pattern continued. He'd be there when I worked late, disappear before I got home, or came over specifically when Victoria knew I had meetings. Olivia grew more distant from me and more animated around him. I checked her phone one evening, when she left the charging, finding dozens of text messages between them. Nothing inappropriate, but the easy familiarity stung. She shared things with this stranger that she no longer shared with me. I was losing my family, one calculated visit at a time. After weeks of Mark's constant presence, I decided to do some digging. Something about the situation didn't add up. Victoria's secrecy, Olivia's sudden attachment to this man, the convenient timing of his appearance. I started with basic online searches. Mark Wilson was a common name, but I found him on social media easily enough. His profile was sparse, with few personal details. The interesting part came when I searched for connections between him and Victoria. There was a photo from 8 years ago. Victoria and Mark at some beach party, his arm around her waist, both looking considerably younger but unmistakable. The caption read, "Summer memories with the crew." So much for just someone I knew before we met, or knew Olivia's biological father. They had history. I dug deeper, using resources from a private investigator friend. What I discovered made my stomach turn. Mark wasn't just some random friend. His phone records showed constant communication with Victoria going back years, including during our marriage. Dozens of calls and messages every month, often late at night or when I was traveling for work. One night, I checked Olivia's tablet while she was sleeping. There were dozens of photos in her gallery. Mark and Victoria together at a cafe, while I thought Victoria was grocery shopping. Mark, Victoria, and Olivia at the park on a day Victoria claimed to be having lunch with her sister. My marriage was built on lies. I waited until Olivia was at school before confronting Victoria. I placed the printed photos on the kitchen table one by one as she watched, her face growing paler. "Who is he really?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. Victoria's composure cracked. "It's not what you think. Stop lying. Is he Olivia's father?" Her hesitation told me everything. "You've been in contact with him our entire marriage, haven't you?" Victoria looked away. "We never completely lost touch. And now you're what? Trying to reunite your little family? Using my money to fund your comfortable life, while you play house with him behind my back." "It's not like that," she insisted, but her denial lacked conviction. "Does Olivia know? Is that why she suddenly hates me?" I told her Mark is her real father. Victoria admitted. She had a right to know. The betrayal cut deep. Not just the affair, but using Olivia as a weapon against me. "So your plan was what? String me along, while reintroducing him into your lives? Make me feel so unwelcome that I just disappear?" Victoria's silence was answer enough. I'd been nothing but a meal ticket all along. The sucker who paid the bills while she maintained her relationship with Mark, waiting for the right moment to bring him back into their lives. What she didn't know was that I wasn't the kind of man who would just roll over and disappear. After discovering Victoria's deception, I expected things to improve or completely fall apart. Instead, our house became a battleground of cold silences and fake politeness. Victoria acted as if our confrontation had never happened, while I consulted with a lawyer about my options. Then one evening, I came home to find a moving box in the entryway. Not one of ours. A new cardboard box filled with men's clothing and toiletries. "What's this?" I asked Victoria, who was preparing dinner with deliberate nonchalance. "Mark's staying with us for a while," she announced, not bothering to look up from the vegetables she was chopping. His apartment flooded. The audacity left me speechless. "Absolutely not." Victoria finally met my gaze, her expression challenging. "This is Olivia's father. She wants him here. This is my house," I countered, my voice dangerously low. "I pay the mortgage. I decide who stays here. Our house," she corrected. "And Olivia has rights too." As if on cue, Olivia bounded down the stairs, stopping abruptly when she saw me. The genuine smile on her face faded instantly. "Where's Mark?" she asked Victoria, ignoring me completely. "He'll be here soon, honey." I couldn't believe what was happening. They were moving this man into my home, and I was supposed to just accept it. Mark arrived an hour later, suitcase in hand, looking entirely too comfortable. He nodded at me, a slight smirk playing at his lips as Victoria showed him to the guest room, my home office that I'd recently converted back after Olivia insisted on a bedroom redecoration. That night, I lay awake listening to muffled voices and laughter from downstairs long after I'd gone to bed. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. The next morning, I found Mark making coffee in my kitchen, wearing sweatpants and no shirt, moving around as if he owned the place. "Morning," he said casually. Hope I didn't wake you. I ignored him, poured my own coffee, and retreated to the bedroom to get ready for work. When I came back down, Victoria and Olivia were at the table with him, laughing at something he'd said. They looked like the perfect little family. My replacement was officially being installed, right in front of me. We need to talk, I told Victoria as I grabbed my keys. Later, she dismissed me. We're having breakfast. I went to work seething, but instead of focusing on my projects, I spent the day on the phone with my lawyer. If Victoria thought she could humiliate me in my own home and get away with it, she was about to learn otherwise. I wasn't going to be pushed out without a fight. A week into Mark's unwelcome stay, I met with Jack Peterson, my attorney of 15 years. His office was a comfortable space with leather chairs and baseball memorabilia, a place that usually put me at ease. Not today. I need to know my options, I explained after laying out the whole sordid situation. I want them out, Victoria, Mark, all of them. But I've raised Olivia since she was 2. I can't just abandon her. Jack leaned back, fingers steepled. Let me ask you something, Ricky. When exactly did you and Victoria get married? 5 years ago this August. Judge Williams performed the ceremony. Jack's eyebrows shot up. Judge Williams from Boston Municipal. That's right. What? Because Williams retired 6 years ago, Jack said slowly, and he wasn't licensed to perform marriages in his last year on the bench, due to an ethics investigation. I stared at him, not comprehending. What are you saying? I'm saying your marriage might not be legal. Jack pulled out his laptop. Let me check something. While he typed, I sat in stunned silence. Could Victoria have known? Was that possible? Here we go, Jack said finally. Williams lost his authorization to perform marriages 7 months before your wedding date. The paperwork might look official, but legally speaking. He looked up at me. You and Victoria were never married. The room seemed to tilt. That can't be right. Massachusetts doesn't recognize common law marriage either, Jack continued, now visibly concerned. Ricky, if you never legally married, she has no claim to your assets, your house, none of it. I drove home in a daze, my thoughts racing. Victoria had always handled the paperwork, the certificate. Had she known all along? Had this been part of her plan? When I arrived home, Victoria, Mark, and Olivia were in the kitchen, looking suspiciously like they'd been discussing something serious. They fell silent when I entered. We need to talk, Victoria announced, her tone resolute. Privately, in our bedroom, she handed me a stack of papers. Divorce papers, she explained unnecessarily. I think it's time we end this charade. I flipped through the pages, noting the outrageous demands. The house, half my savings, alimony. She wanted everything. I nearly laughed at the irony. You should read these more carefully, I suggested, handing them back. I know what they say, she snapped. My lawyer drafted them. Then your lawyer is incompetent, I replied calmly. You can't divorce someone you were never legally married to. Victoria's face went completely blank. What are you talking about? Judge Williams wasn't authorized to perform marriages when we had our ceremony. The marriage isn't valid. I smiled thinly, which means these papers are worthless. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real fear in Victoria's eyes. Victoria's shock quickly morphed into desperation. You're lying, she hissed. We have a marriage certificate. A worthless piece of paper, I replied. My lawyer confirmed it. Judge Williams wasn't authorized to perform marriages. You might want to check with your own attorney, but the facts won't change. She grabbed her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed, and stepped into the bathroom. Through the door, I could hear her urgent whispers, punctuated by moments of silence as she listened to what I assumed was confirmation of my claims. When she emerged, her face was ashen. This doesn't change anything about Olivia, she said defiantly. She's still not your biological daughter. True, I conceded. But this is still my house, purchased before you entered the picture. You have no legal claim to it, or my assets. Her eyes narrowed. You wouldn't throw us out. Not Olivia, I clarified. But you and Mark? Pack your bags. Victoria's composure cracked. You can't do this. We've been together for years. Living a lie you crafted, I countered. How long have you been planning this, Victoria? Was the invalid marriage part of your scheme from the beginning, or just a lucky accident? Her silence told me everything. You've been playing me since day one. I continued, the truth settling like ice in my veins. You saw a man with money, a man willing to help a woman with a sick child, and you targeted me. That's not true, she protested weakly. Isn't it? You kept in touch with Mark our entire relationship. You deliberately turned Olivia against me. You invited him to live in my house while planning to divorce me and take half of everything I own. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an angle, an escape route. What about Olivia? You said you loved her. I do love her. That hasn't changed. But I won't be manipulated anymore. I walked downstairs to find Mark and Olivia in the living room, pretending not to have been eavesdropping. Party's over, I announced. Mark, you need to leave. Now. He smirked. That's not your call to make, buddy. Actually, it is. This is my house, and you're trespassing. Mom said we're getting divorced. Olivia piped up, her voice small but defiant. She said we'd live here with Mark. My heart broke for her, a pawn in her mother's manipulative game. There's not going to be a divorce, Olivia, because your mom and I were never legally married. I looked directly at Mark. And neither you nor your mother have any right to this house. Mark's smug expression faltered. Victoria, he called up the stairs. She appeared, looking defeated. It's true. The marriage isn't valid. For the first time, I saw real fear in Mark's eyes. Their perfect plan was crumbling, and they knew it. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. After the confrontation, Victoria and Mark retreated to the guest room, huddling together and whispering furiously. I could hear their arguments through the walls, blame being tossed back and forth like a hot potato. Their perfect plan had collapsed, and neither wanted to take responsibility for the failure. I slept in the master bedroom with the door locked, not trusting either of them. During the day, I worked from home, unwilling to leave them alone in my house. I'd already transferred my most important documents and valuables to a safe deposit box, just in case. Olivia was caught in the middle, confused and angry. Victoria had filled her head with promises of a new life with her real dad, and now those plans were evaporating. She avoided me entirely, spending most of her time in her room. On the third morning, I came downstairs to find Victoria waiting at the kitchen table, alone. Can we talk? She asked, her voice hollow. Civilly, I poured myself coffee before sitting across from her, maintaining a careful distance. I'm listening. I need more time, she said, to find a place. Get things arranged for Olivia. We can't just leave overnight. You have 1 week, I replied evenly. I've already arranged for a moving company to pack your and Olivia's belongings. I slid a business card across the table. They're paid in full. Her eyes narrowed. And what about Olivia? You claim to love her. I do love her. That hasn't changed. I took a deep breath. She's welcome to visit any time. I'll continue supporting her financially, directly to her, through a trust fund for education. Not through you. Victoria's face hardened. She won't want to see you. Not after this. That's her choice to make when she's older, I said, refusing to take the bait. For now, I'll respect her feelings, but I won't cut her off completely. You're a cold bastard, Victoria spat, her mask of reasonableness slipping. No, I'm a man who's finally seeing clearly. There's a difference. A week later, I stood in my empty driveway, watching as the moving truck pulled away. Victoria had barely spoken to me during the packing process, communicating through terse notes and text messages. Mark had disappeared 2 days earlier, supposedly to get their new place ready, though I suspected he was already distancing himself now that the golden goose had stopped producing. Olivia had refused to say goodbye. Her last words to me, spat in anger during the packing, had been, "I hate you," each syllable like a knife to my heart. I hoped someday she'd understand, but I wouldn't hold my breath. As the dust settled on my now quiet house, I felt a strange mixture of loss and relief. The family I thought I'd built had been an illusion, a carefully constructed trap designed to extract maximum value from my bank account and my heart. Yet despite everything, I didn't regret helping that woman and her daughter in the hospital all those years ago. I'd acted out of genuine kindness, and the fact that it had been twisted and exploited didn't make the initial act any less worthy. 6 months later, I received a letter forwarded through my lawyer. It was from Olivia, a short note saying she missed me and asking if we could talk. Apparently, Victoria and Mark's relationship had imploded once the money dried up. He'd moved on to greener pastures, leaving them struggling. I arranged to meet Olivia for ice cream, just the two of us. Our relationship would never be the same, but maybe we could build something new, something based on truth this time. As for Victoria, last I heard, she was working 2 jobs and living in a small apartment across town. Karma has a way of catching up eventually. Sometimes, the most expensive lesson in life is learning who doesn't deserve your kindness. But I'd rather pay that price than become the kind of man who never offers kindness at all.